Live. What is going on, everyone? This is Dr. Josh Funk, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zak Baker with Rehab to Perform and R2P Academy. And welcome to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. We have on with us somebody that I think very highly of in the PT field, who is got his hand in a little bit of everything. He has found his way through his career, being able to make an impact across a wide variety of clinicians in a wide variety of ways. Zak Gabor, appreciate you being on here today. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Hello, Zach. Thank you very much for having me on, and the feeling's very mutual.
So Zach and I first met through the Level Up initiative, which him and his colleagues spearheaded, and I think they were running short on qualified mentors, so he asked if I would be interested and went on there, served as a mentor for one of his early cohort groups that they had go through. I had an awesome time being involved with that. And it's kind of cool because the people that were in my group, I still run into them when I go down to CSM each year. I stay connected with them just online and see all the different things that they have done. One just finished up residency and is working in a collegiate sports environment. Another just started her own private practice. Another one actually started his own private online business. So it's really cool, just some of these relationships that I would have never had unless I got involved with that. So, Zach, if I never formally said thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, man. That was an elite. I remember, I got to give Zach the most elite group of all time. And yeah, to this date, probably one of the most elite groups to ever come out of the OG Level Up mentorship. So thank you for that.
No, definitely. And, Zach, before we get started, you have kind of worked your way into a non-traditional, you don't work a typical 9-to-5, 40-hour work week as a PT. Do you mind giving the listeners just a little bit of an idea of what you're involved in and what you actually do for your career?
Yes, for sure. So like you said, a little bit of everything. I mean, primarily the reality is that I was always very much super passionate and had a desire to get into education in some way while balancing that with clinical. And that's essentially what I'm doing. So 2 days a week, I'm in a cash-based setting up here in Rochester, New York, out of a strength and conditioning facility. That's been really amazing. Super fun opportunity and experience, getting to collaborate with some great coaches. The PT who owns the place, Russ, shout out, a really great guy, very Level Up CALU aligned. So I'm there 2 days a week. And then I'm running my own personal remote rehab for folks with chronic recurring pain issues. That's small scale. So not like Steph, but I work with 10 clients at a time. And that's been really fun because I really love the remote medium for certain particular subsets of population for PT. And then, so that's my clinical half. And then, my main gig is on the educational side is with CALU, and what that's going to be becoming soon. But yeah, it's definitely, creating and running my own education business is really exciting, comes with a lot of ups and downs, but it does allow me to really fulfill that desire that I have on the educational side of things.
No, and that's awesome. And you've got kind of the best of all worlds where you have some clinical, you have clinical in a variety of ways, in person and online, and you've got that educational realm as well, all three of which you're pretty heavily immersed into. And that stuff doesn't happen overnight. And I get frustrated at times because a lot of people try to get into those different spaces, cash-based PT, online remote PT, educational realm. And I think they get this false illusion that you can just decide you want to do it one day and the next day you're going to be successful with it. And that is not the case by any means. I think you do a really good job in all three of those realms. Do you mind just shedding a little bit of light on this stuff didn't happen overnight? What were some things that you had to do to actually make this a reality and something feasible?
100%. I mean, I would say if anyone is successful at that, it's the exception to the rule. Because the reality is for me and Steph, like this was the accumulation of baby steps, but more importantly, consistent action taken over time that aligned with our values. And so, it started with just connecting with I mean, part of the reason we asked you to be in Level Up is because we had relationships with a lot of the great people involved in R2P because we all shared this kind of collective mission to want to positively impact healthcare. And so it started with just connecting with authentic, aligned people. And then from there, I got a ton of value out of my experience, working in quote unquote a traditional healthcare setting, but I worked at a really good practice where I was able to work with great colleagues, develop a ton of confidence and competence with my clinical skill set, invested in a lot of continuing education and betterment of myself. And it was those experiences that I think over time started to give me the confidence to kind of put myself out there and continue to do something. And ultimately it came down to for Steph and I, a big core value is less complaining, more creating. So if we're frustrated with something or we're complaining about something, it's well, do something about it. And so that's what kind of started to building the education company, was trying to do something about our frustrations within, our own academic preparation. With remote stuff, that was after 7 years, 8 years being in an insurance-based model, we both felt for the populations we wanted to serve, the remote worked really well, but we started doing it on such smaller scale ways before it ever became a formal thing. So it's not we left one day and we're okay, I'm opening this up tomorrow, and then there's 10 people at your door. I started my remote thing a year before I formally announced it and went public with it and LLC'd it. And it took a lot of time for me to get over some of my own self-consciousness and feeling confident with it. And even in the cash-based setting, which is, I think, a great option for certain people, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that if I didn't have the confidence and the competence that I had established early.
Now, and I love how you talked about your first experience, and honestly, it's similar to mine. I worked at prior to R2P for 2.5 years, I worked at a outpatient orthopedic sports medicine. It was probably 50% your traditional general orthopedic population and the other 50% more active population. And it was a very good place to work to start my career. It was PT owned, and the owner was a great guy, good PT, good business person, and just a genuine person as well. I got a lot of reps. I had colleagues that I could pick their brain on. The patient's clientele was pretty consistent with what I wanted to work with. It just wasn't an area that had future career aspirations for me to grow into, but it was something that reminds me of what I tell students that come through R2P. Every experience is meaningful, and especially your first job doesn't need to be your dream job, but figure out what can I take from this experience that is going to help put me into the next phase. And I think it's kind of similar to when you go to a Con Ed course, you don't walk into a Con Ed course expecting 100% of the material to be new, novel, groundbreaking material. But you go there with a certain expectation of, hey, I'm going to leave here being able to look at a topic that I'm familiar with through a slightly different lens. Or maybe I'm going to go to this and I'm going to learn a new evaluation or intervention method for something I'm already familiar with. Or maybe I feel pretty darn competent with this, but I love the person who's teaching this, and I want to hear how he verbalizes, how she verbalizes different things. And I think it's no different than kind of navigating your career of just, like you said, less complaining, more creating. Figure out what are the positives that we can take from every experience and use that to catapult us forward. Now, you have had the benefits of seeing some of your entrepreneurial experiences take off and do very well. That is not a linear process for anybody who has been involved in the entrepreneurial space. What have been just some wake-up calls or learning experiences that you've had through this journey? And I'll frame this up as, what are the ones that you can share with us without dropping too many F-bombs or expletives along the way? Because I've had many of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you first have because like I never had I didn't identify entrepreneurially in school. Like I wasn't like, I'm going to start a business. Like actually the opposite of that. But I think when you really have an idea that you feel passionate about, you're like so starry eyed and you're like, I'm going to change the world. And it's super exciting for a little while. And then like the reality of business sets in where it's like, oh my God, like it is such a roller coaster. I mean, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month. There's just so many highs and lows. And I think it's like you really need to be in it for the right reasons and the right mission to kind of propel you through some of those days that you're honestly going to be like, I mean, Steph will tell you, like, I had days that I just wanted to throw in the towel and be like, I'm done. Like, I'm so done with this. So I think like just embrace the highs and lows is such a wake up call for that. And I would say the second biggest thing for me is probably just like mental health. And making sure that for example, it turns out like running a fully free mentorship, while I wouldn't change anything for the world, comes with a lot of baggage mentally. Doing that over 3 years, impacting those thousands of lives of people that have been through it, one of the most remarkable and incredible things in my life. But also like, I really didn't make any sort of compensation for that at all. And you say like, at first it's like, okay, that's fine. But as the years go on and you're finding that struggle, like that was a really hard thing for me to navigate and deal with, is like, how do I actually turn this business into and kind of overcome that mindset issue? Like I was very self-conscious about being perceived as someone that was making money or making a profit for running an education business. But in the reality, like if you want to be successful and you want to be sustainable, you have to be anchored to a mission that really resonates and you feel compelled by, but you also need to figure out a way to have some sort of boundaries and create a model that is also sustainable and profitable, that fits within the things you're trying to do. And so I would say that was one of the biggest wake up calls for me for sure.
No, I'm glad you touched on that. And it's tough in regards to, you hit the nail on the head earlier of, if you are pursuing something that is going to take up a large percentage of your time and just your overall bandwidth, physically, mentally, emotionally, it has to be something that you really care about, because if not, you're going to throw in the towel, like you said. So I do think, if you are going out on whatever your passion project is, it needs to be that. It needs to be a passion project. Because if you just go out to try to start a business for the sake of, oh, I want to be an owner, or I want to make more money, or whatever narrative has been fed to you, if you're not anchored to some core values like you had mentioned, it is very difficult just to not get swept away in it. And, going to what you had mentioned, I appreciate there's a lot of things that we do as a company, either at R2P or R2P Academy, or just that I've been involved with community events, that they are not for profit. They are for genuine, authentic distribution of information, and there's no monetary gain from that. And it is a lot of effort. And I would be naive to sit up here and not say, like, I've had conversations with my wife and with my family, like, hey, why are you up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night typing this thing up for something that you're getting nothing in return? And I think it's that, not that there's a direct return on investment with it, but I think what I have hoped that has bought either me or either of our respective companies behind kind of the doors is, it shows a level of authenticity that if we ever do put something out there that does have a monetary value to it, that you're working with somebody genuine, and that you're working with somebody who's kind of in the trenches there with you, and they've gone through those paces as well. So I'll be honest, I didn't expect our conversation to go this way at all, but I'm glad that you brought it up, because there is a level of commitment to, whether it's being a social media presence or starting an online forum or starting different groups and cohorts, that there has to be some genuine passion on your behalf with it. Or one, people will see right through it and they know that you're not in it, and they'll drop out. Or it's just something that it's really hard, like you had mentioned, to be sustainable. And at the end of the day, if you have a product that you're charging people for, they don't have to buy it. And if they don't want it, they can go somewhere else. So I think that's the other thing that has kind of pushed me. If there's ever been something that I have had financial incentive behind, honestly, it kind of lights a fire under my butt to make sure it's the highest quality thing I can produce, because people are going to give you extremely candid feedback.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, this is something that was also I guess like I would file it under the wake up call, is like, creating something that you put a ton of work into and that you is the highest quality also doesn't ensure that it's a good quote unquote market fit, or AKA what is this a nice to have or a need to have? And I think for us with CALU and some of the things that we were creating nice to haves and things that were like, they were good, they were high quality, but they weren't necessarily like, ooh, yeah, like this is the thing. And so that was like a really good wake up call for us as well, is like, you got to just put yourself out there and continue to create and put a lot of effort into it. But it might take time to find that thing that's like a genuine fit for what your audience is looking for. And that's really valuable and aligns with the collective mission.
It's kind of funny too, because you talk about, being able to scale things. And when you talk about, whether it's just, knowledge that you're trying to distribute, or different philosophies or different resources, at times it's very easy to operate in a silo or to operate in a vacuum where you talk with the same 5 or 6 colleagues and you have something that you all agree upon as like, hey, this should be industry standard. This is what we all should be doing. This is what I think is really great stuff. And then you put it out there and it's crickets, and like nobody resonates with it. It's like, all right, are we just not doing what we think we should be doing, or do we need to change up our message and just make sure that I think we are communicating something valuable, but for whatever reason, it's not resonating. And we need to find a way that people who are unfamiliar with us or this treatment methodology or this philosophy, it hits home with them as well. And I think that's been the funniest thing. Like when we've done different things through either R2P or the Academy, like you get so wrapped up in talking with like-minded individuals that you almost forget, like, you're less than 1% of the population that may think in that certain mindset. Yeah. And if you have a mission of reaching the masses and talking to PTs and healthcare in general, you need to know, what does that other side of the conversation look like? How can we meet halfway? And then how can we all come to agreements on, hey, what are some of these non-negotiables that we think should be bare minimums or should be industry standard? But for as many people that think like you do or I do or other people, there's people who think the exact opposite, that you're almost doing yourself a disservice if you're not mindful of that.
Well, Zach, I mean, to be fully honest with you, like you had a post, I think last week that went out that like, and this is why I love and admire what you guys are building, and you specifically like leading a lot of the clin ed, but like a lot of our mission with Level Up and CALU and, what we're doing is all about raising the floor, but that's not sexy. Like no one, it's not like people are like, ooh, wow, that's so exciting. But it's like, we know, like you and I know that that's like an incredibly meaningful and purposeful and like really important thing. And that just because we're talking about a floor, it doesn't mean that that's like a low level, because we have a very high standard based on what is expected of us. But it's like, creating a company and education around that mission is a challenge in and of itself, because it's like not the flashy, sexy thing. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And it's something where you only have so much bandwidth to excel in certain areas of a field or of a profession. And I mean, you look at medicine, like you can be a physician, like a general physician, or you can be an orthopedist or a neurologist or an oncologist, but you can't be all of those things really, really well. Same thing from a clin ed standpoint. Like you reach a certain point where you can only teach so much as well, and then you need to build out a staff or build out resources underneath of you, and you become more of a delegation role. And you start to just see how all of this stuff evolves and all of this stuff starts to scale. And at the end of the day, I think, with mutual missions of what we both have and what many other people in our field have, we want to drive good patient outcomes. And driving good patient outcomes, oftentimes, it's great to have an A+++++ outcome. It's even more important not to have an F or a D. So if we can just make sure that everybody who comes through the doors at least leaves with a C, and on our worst possible day as a clinician, with their worst possible day as a patient, they still have a satisfactory outcome, I'm pretty
Yeah.
good with that, because guess what? More oftentimes than not, it's going to be a B or a B plus, and a lot of times it's going to be an A. And I think that's really what we need to protect against within your respective companies or within just the field in general.
Sure. I'm with it.
Well, throughout your just career, whether it's, with patient care or just through the different professional involvements that you've had, what's been an area that you've been involved in that has surprisingly been more exciting, fun, or enjoyable than what you imagined it would be?
Honestly, entrepreneurship and like the creative process. Like I think, when I think about entrepreneurship, there's like different buckets. Like I'm not the type of entrepreneur that's like, I want to learn how to manage a business as good as possible. Like for me, it's like, I love creating. I love trying to solve hard and complex problems through creativity. And I think that's what surprised me the most is like, I really, really enjoy that process, and that piece of entrepreneurship is like the getting to create, the getting to be innovative and forward thinking. Like, again, I didn't really identify as that or think that I was going to do that, but like that for sure is what surprised me the most about myself.
That's interesting. Would you label yourself as somebody who is like relatively creative and imaginative, or is that something that as you've...
Yeah, I would actually. It comes in different ways. Like I'm not good, like from a creative sense of drawing, no, but like from a creative sense of like really good creative and crystal clear vision and ideas of like ways to communicate something or problem solve. I think that is a skill set that I've learned about myself that I really like enjoy, that aspect.
That's funny. I'm the exact opposite. I am not somebody who can create a vision and kind of forecast the future. I'm more of the opposite of, I like somebody putting out a macro of what they want to happen, and then I like being behind the scenes, kind of figuring out logistically what do these steps look like to make that happen. And I think you need you kind of need that visionary and that more of that executioner type person on the
100%
as part of that. Awesome.
100%.
Zach, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you are a very busy guy, and I was kind of thrilled that we were able to put this together on relatively short notice, getting you on here. For people who are listening in right now, you had mentioned some different avenues that you're involved in, some stuff that you have available to people in PT school early in their career. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? And is there anything right now that you're currently working on that they should stay tuned for?
Yeah. So best way to be in contact, just my personal Instagram, zakgabor.dpt, and that's ZAKGABOR.dpt. So that'd be a great way. And then in terms of projects, so I mean, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but by the time this gets released, it'll be very close to anyway. But we're actually going through one final rebrand with CALU because, we know for a fact we work incredibly well together with Clinical Athlete and Level Up, but the brand itself is tricky because it lacks a lot of clarity about who we are and what we do. So we're actually going to be announcing in just a few weeks here our rebrands of an evolved version of Clinical Athlete. So we'll be re-embracing the Clinical Athlete brand with an updated logo, updated mission, and the course that we've been busting our butt on over the last year, what we've been calling Foundations 2 or exercise prescription course, that is going to be turning into our Clinical Athletes provider certification. And so we'll be super proud to release that in the new year. And there will definitely be some announcements. So you can follow the Clinical Athlete Instagram page for more information on that.
Awesome. Well, that is some exciting stuff, Zach. And I appreciate you again taking the time to make your way on here. And hopefully we're coming up on CSM in a few months, and that should be up your way in Boston. So I'm hoping we can connect when we get up there. Yeah,
we're up in Rochester now, but we'll be there for sure for that weekend. So I can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah, everything north of Pennsylvania is kind of the same thing for me. So you're up there in that direction somewhere.
Sounds good. Thank you, Zach, so much for having me, and I really appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing to push the profession forward.
I appreciate the feeling is mutual, Zach. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or have been tuned in for multiple episodes, we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for listening.